Let's be real. Historical accuracy is optional when it comes to these dramas. Sure, there's a little truth in there somewhere, but we're really here for the gorgeous costumes and over-the-top grandeur. Whether it's the wrong century or totally made-up events, who cares? When the wardrobe is this fabulous, facts can take a back seat. Medici, Netflix's historical drama, brings 15th century Florence to life through the eyes of one of its most powerful families. With Dustin Hoffman and Richard Madden leading season 1, the show dives into the Medici family's influence on the Renaissance, their ties to the Pope, and even an assassination attempt. But when it comes to the love stories, let's just say the writers got a little creative. Some of the romantic subplots were entirely invented for drama, which, while fun to watch, isn't exactly accurate. Bridgerton was an instant hit, giving us a Regency-era England that's more fantasy than history. Based on Julia Quinn's novels and produced by Shondaland, the show follows the Bridgerton family's romantic escapades. But don't go expecting historical accuracy here. From the wardrobe, sparkling fabrics didn't exist until 1934, to the vibrant color palette, Bridgerton reimagines the period in a way that's visually stunning, but far from realistic. And honestly, that's the point. It was never meant to be a history lesson. Showtime's The Tudors gave us a very Hollywood version of King Henry VIII's reign. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers plays a much younger, much hotter version of Henry, and the show had its fair share of historical inaccuracies. For starters, they played fast and loose with Henry's family tree. On the show, his father is an only child, but in reality, he had siblings. They also condensed timelines and changed details, like the life and death of Henry's illegitimate son, Fitzroy. The Borgias takes us into the ruthless world of one of history's most infamous families. Starring Jeremy Irons as Rodrigo Borgia, the show mixes fact with a lot of fiction. For example, the poisoning scene with Lucrezia Borgia saving her father. That's more dramatic flair than historical truth. While the Borgias definitely had enemies who exaggerated their exploits, the show cranked things up even more, painting a picture that's entertaining but not entirely accurate. The Great is less about accuracy and more about fun. It's a satirical take on the life of Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, and her coup against Peter the Great. The timeline is massively condensed for the sake of the story. On the show, they marry almost immediately, but in real life, it took nearly a year. And while the coup happened 20 years into their marriage, the show has it going down in the same year. It's more comedy than history, but that's part of the charm. Victoria was the PBS period drama that brought us Jenna Coleman as Queen Victoria, focusing on the early years of her 64-year reign. The show is known for weaving historical facts with a bit of creative flair, but let's not pretend it was all accurate. For example, that whole thing about Queen Victoria fancying Prime Minister Lord Melbourne? Yeah, that never happened. While he was a close ally, there was no romantic tension. Pure fiction. Outlander is all about blending historical romance with fantasy. We follow Claire Randall, a British Army nurse who time travels from World War II to 1743 Scotland, where she marries Jamie Fraser, a Highland warrior. The show is rooted in Diana Gabaldon's novels, but it plays loose with history. Sure, the Jacobite uprising really happened, but the show glosses over the fact that some Scots actually fought for the British. Netflix's Freud is not the biography you were looking for. Set in the 1880s, it follows a young Sigmund Freud in Vienna, but instead of diving deep into his early work on psychoanalysis, the show goes full-blown fiction. They've got Freud investigating disappearances and getting wrapped up in occult conspiracies with a psychic. None of this ever happened. It's a cool premise, but let's just say if you're watching Freud for historical accuracy, you're in the wrong place. Peaky Blinders gave us the Shelby family, led by the infamous Thomas Shelby, a ruthless gang boss ruling the streets of Birmingham. But while the Shelbys make for incredible drama, the real Peaky Blinders were quite different. For starters, the real gang was active in the 1890s, not the 1920s like the show portrays. And the Shelby family? They never actually existed. The real Peaky Blinders were a lot less glamorous and didn't survive long enough to be part of the Roaring Twenties. Vikings started strong, following the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok and his family. But as the seasons went on, historical accuracy took a serious hit. Some things were spot on, like Ragnar's death in the snake pit and Rollo's rise to become a king. But other characters? Not so much. Eric the Red didn't die in a barn, and Ivar the Boneless didn't die in battle. The show took liberties, sure, but by the end, those creative choices were pretty hard to ignore.